She's an expert on online disinformation. She was formerly in the Wilson Center's She was formerly a disinformation fellow at the Wilson Center. Any hiring decisions are up to the Department of Homeland Security, but this is a person with extensive qualifications.
To be famous and powerful, Santa, if you're listening, please tell me what to do. What do I to be famous and powerful?
It's super fascist, communistic, censorship atrocious. Ministry of Truth tells us what is or isn't kosher. If they don't like what we say, the punishment's ferocious. Super fascist, communistic, censorship atrocious. Really hypocritical since they lie to Americans all the time. Because they're so afraid we'll speak, the left has gone quite mad. They've summoned up this Broadway geek to tell us when we're bad. And now since Jen Psaki circumventing ain't enough, this Mary Poppins wannabe thinks she can shut us up.
Alright guys, we got him. Down goes Biden's Ministry of Truth. Down goes the so-called Governance Disinformation Board, okay? As they're considering shutting down this Orwellian government initiative. But Nina Jankowicz, the Minister of Truth, is actually going to resign, which means that this is probably more than likely going to get scrapped, because there's a whole lot of massive backlash against this, because everybody knows what this was, right? Everybody knows that this was the government, I meant the Democrat Party, right? That's what I mean when I say government, attempt to control information, to control what is true and what is not true, particularly when it comes to what is said on these online platforms. Okay, as we've seen the Democrat Party become more and more authoritarian over time, especially since the pandemic. Okay, they've truly shown us who they are. They simply do not believe in free speech. That's why they were so upset about the idea of Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, because they don't like free speech, right? They don't like free speech. They believe in censorship, censoring any ideas that they don't agree with, regardless of whether or not it's actually true. Okay, and that is why this was dangerous. Okay, because this was the Democrat Party's attempt to say, hey, you know what? We're going to have the government try to formally influence censorship on these social media platforms, right? Have the government tell these social media platforms what is true and what's not true, what they should censor and what they should not censor. And we all know that, again, it's not based off actual facts, it's based off narrative, okay? And I give you a few examples because they try to justify the creation of this governance board by saying that, well, we're only doing it because of Russia and the election and immigration and the pandemic. And I'm like, those are three topics that I do not trust the government on, right? The government lied to us about Russia and the election, right? They basically tried to say that Trump and Putin were working together and they were butt buddies, and Trump was a Manchurian candidate and that has been installed by Putin, right? Something that we know is not true. Trump did not collude with Russia. But again, if you listen to the government, particularly the Democrat Party, tell us about this, they try to push that off as if that was actually true, okay? When it came to the pandemic, we know that the government got some things wrong when it came to that, okay? When it came to immigration, the government trying to tell us that our borders are secured, our borders are not open, okay? That we aren't having one of the worst immigration crises that we've seen in a long time. All these things the government has lied to us about. So why in the world would I trust the so-called Disinformation Board on those three subjects that, again, I trust the government on the least, right? And that is why this is dangerous, guys, okay? And there was so much backlash that, again, it is causing the Biden administration to now consider shutting down this Disinformation Board, and Nina Jankowicz is quitting, right? So let's read about this. After a wave of backlash, the Department of Homeland Security is considering shutting down its just created Disinformation Governance Board, which was officially tasked with combating false narratives around domestic terrorism and human trafficking around the border, but which was widely interpreted as having a much broader brief to monitor and possibly curtail disfavored political speech. I mean, that's what it was, right? That's what it was, okay? It was a Trojan horse. That's exactly what it was. Just 3 weeks after its inception, the Disinformation Board's operations have been paused. Multiple anonymous DHS officials told the Washington Post DHS reportedly decided to shut down the board entirely on Monday, and its director, Nina Jankowicz, tendered a voluntary resignation letter on Tuesday. But DHS officials quickly called Jankowicz to give her the option to stay on while the Homeland Security Advisory Committee determines whether to shut down the board entirely. I mean, it sounds to me like she don't really want to stay, right? And, I do know why they chose Nina Jankowicz in the first place, because she's crazy, right? She's the exact type of person the Democrat Party wants running this disinformation board. I mean, she said, guys, that online platforms should censor anybody that criticizes women, right? Like, she specifically was talking about Kamala Harris, right? And all the criticism Kamala Harris was getting, she called for people to be censored for criticizing the vice presidential candidate, okay, on the campaign trail, right? Criticizing politicians simply because the politician has a vagina or is a so-called woman of color. Again, that's dangerous stuff, right? You're basically saying that, no, you can't criticize our leaders, the people that are making decisions about this country, right? That is the essence of free speech, being able to criticize political leaders. And once you start shutting down criticism of political leaders, we've fallen off a cliff, right? That is the type of stuff that happens in North Korea. You can't criticize Kim Jong-un, right? You might end up dead somewhere if you do that, right? Or Putin in Russia, you might end up dead somewhere if you do that. That's the type of stuff that the Democrat Party says that they're against. But they install somebody to head the government's disinformation board, right? That is a believer in that type of censorship, okay? And now they want to be all surprised when they get a bunch of public backlash from it, right? I mean, it was obviously this was going to happen because you have a lunatic running it. As soon as her role was announced, Jankowicz, who served as a disinformation fellow at a think tank before joining the administration, was harshly criticized for her record and online behavior, which included her vocal discrediting of the now verified Hunter Biden laptop story and her support for Christopher Steele, the author of the discredited dossier on former President Donald Trump that helped launch the Mueller probe in his 2016 campaign. Again, why would I trust the government on Russia in the elections when the person that is running the disinformation board pushed disinformation about Russia in the election, right? Why would I trust her when she tried to discredit the Hunter Biden laptop story, which we know is a fact, right? Again, it wasn't about truth. It's about narrative. And that's why people were backlashing, because this is dangerous. Quote, Nina Jankowicz has been subjected to unjustified and vile personal attacks and physical threats, a DHS spokesperson told the Post in a statement. In congressional hearings and in media interviews, the secretary has repeatedly defended her as eminently qualified and underscored the importance of the department's disinformation work, and he will continue to do so. Again, I can't believe they're standing behind this person, right? Just let her resign. But again, this is what they want. This is what they want. And they're trying to say, she's been subjected to unjustified and vile personal attacks and physical threats. AKA, any criticism of her is a threat, right? It's violence. It's the same thing that Patrice Cullors says, right? All these woke women, you guys notice? Any criticism of them is violence, right? Any criticism of them is harmful, is a threat. That is how they shut down dissenting opinions. Many Republicans viewed the board with skepticism, given that its mission was not well articulated by the Biden administration, suspicious that it would primarily seek to target right-wing thought on social media platforms and elsewhere. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said on NBC's Meet the Press that the body could have done a better job of communicating what it is and what it was. And, well, you guys are vague about it because at the end of the day, there's a very broad purpose to what you're doing. Right? It starts off with, well, we just talked about the pandemic and human trafficking at the border in Russia and the elections. That's what we start off with. Again, 3 topics that I do not trust the government on at all, right? But, we know where that goes. We know where it expands. Government never gets smaller. It only gets bigger, right? And that department was going to get bigger, and it was going to basically be the Democrats' attempt to control the narrative before the midterms. That's what they're going to do. And going into 2024, right? To silence dissenting opinions. To silence those on the right. That's what it was. Okay? And they got called out for it. It got called out. So now that the jig is up, that the mask is off, they're considering shutting down the board. Now, who knows if they will go through with it, but it seems to me that Miss Nina Jankowicz the kitchen's a little bit too hot for her, right? She can't take the heat, and she's trying to buy out because she got a little bit of criticism online, right, about the things that she said in the past and the things that she's advocated for in the past. That justifiably has scared a lot of people into thinking that, this is the government's attempt to control what's true and what's not true, right? Again, this is the same person that basically said you shouldn't be able to criticize women on Twitter, that social media platforms should censor people for criticizing women. Again, that ain't a slippery slope. That's falling off a cliff, okay? And we can't have that in this country. So, with that being said, we will see. But it looks like the Biden's Ministry of Truth is on its way to ending before it ever really began. But we still have the problem of the Democrats trying to pressure these big tech CEOs and executives into censoring information they don't like, right? So the battle's not over, but it looks like the government's not going to be able to formally silence speech that they don't like just yet. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.